Hi, I'm Max Keiser. This is Max and Stacy Report coming to you from El Salvador, land of the free, home of the brave. The world is cracking under the weight of all that fiat money printing, and the only place that's really doing well is El Salvador. Why? Because we're here. Yeah. Is that right, Stacy?
Maybe, Max, that's because we are contrarian to all the mainstream media. Okay, because if you look at it, tomorrow is the 1-year anniversary of the Bitcoin law here in El Salvador. And I'm going to show you a headline from the National Review. And it reads, "The verdict is in for El Salvador's Bitcoin experiment. It failed." According to Steve Hanke and Caleb Hoffman, El Salvador was a first mover in the adoption of Bitcoin. Its failures were both predictable and predicted. So they're saying the Bitcoin experiment has failed. We hit 1 year and they're saying it's a failure. For the rest of the episode, we're going to show you what winning looks like. But what do you have to say about this National Review headline, Max, that Bitcoin has failed in El Salvador?
Right. Well, I think what we're going to get into here is that, I often say the film, The Poseidon Adventure, when it flips over and they don't know which way is up and which way is down, this is the global economy is flipped over because of all the money printing and all the irresponsibility of the central banks. And the people like Steve Hanke, who writes absolute pablum and nonsense, doesn't know which way is up and which way is down. We're going to prove it right here using word analysis. Stacy.
Right. So first I'll start with the headline from Finland. Okay. Well, kind of like the exact opposite of El Salvador, which is tropical. There it's kind of Arctic and freezing, right? And it's really freezing this winter because they're winning so hard, apparently. Here is the headline, Max, for you. An update from Finland. Electricity suppliers are increasing their prices 10 to 12-fold for now. Small businesses are already collapsing, and households and larger corporations are likely to follow in the coming months. Are you absolutely sure that we are winning? So when I saw that headline, and of course Europe is being told that they're winning as electricity prices soar, as supermarket prices soar, as well just the overall standard of living collapses, they're told they are winning. So I thought, well, as this deglobalization and de-dollarization hits and things look bad from a normal person's perspective, certainly as a Bitcoiner, it looks like it's pretty horrible to have your energy prices climbing by 10 to 12 times. Then I realized, well, maybe, of course, if they think they're winning, it's quite obvious that they think El Salvador is losing, right? Because if they're through the looking glass. This is like something, they're on the other side where they're winning, even though everybody who is not high on fiat can see that they're losing. So obviously somebody who believes they're winning is going to see El Salvador is failing.
Right. This is one of the symptoms of fiat money disease. You completely lose the ability of using the English language in an intelligent way. I'm sure if Steve Hanke was covering the Hindenburg disaster, at their burst into flames, he'd be saying, look at those people at the Hindenburg, they're winning, right? Because all of those people who are trying to cover El Salvador and use the metrics of how they've been analyzing global economy up until now are befuddled. They don't know exactly how to cover the fact that the economy is actually growing and GDP is growing and they're the bright spot in the global economy. And unlike every other country in the world, tourism is back to pre-pandemic levels. And these things are happening in a positive way because of total lack of understanding how to even use English language. Forget about this guy's credentials as an economist. He's not even actually able to put together two sentences that are in a coherent manner. He should be locked up in a rubber room.
Well, again, I think they believe they are winning, and yet they are failing. So the moment that they declared victory was February 26, 2022. History, 50 years from now, 100 years from now, will establish that was the moment that they lost when they stole Russia's reserves, $630 billion worth of reserves. Right now, they have declared it victory because we have this sort of online social media censorship and only one viewpoint allowed, right? And anybody else who has a different viewpoint is either deplatformed or silenced in some way. Their tweets, as Mark Zuckerberg said about Facebook, they just silence these people by not allowing their, any news that disagrees with the narrative to be silenced. So if they think they're winning or they declare they're winning, it makes sense that Steve Hanke would think that El Salvador's failing. So I want to show you another thing. As we point out, the deglobalization and de-dollarization happening in the West, in the global, everywhere, because we are on a dollar system. We have been on a dollar system for the last 50 years. All trade is settled in dollars. The dollar SWIFT is run by the U.S. So we're on a dollar system. This is disintegrating. Steve Hanke thought that was like the brilliant best times of El Salvador, where he says that in 2001, long before Bukele arrived on the scene, El Salvador phased out its domestic currency, the colón, and introduced a dollarized competitive currency regime, one in which the dollar was legal tender, but any other currency could be used. Since then, the country has rediscovered economic stability. So he says that this dollar period since 2001 has been great for El Salvador, that despite, then does not mention any of the exodus of the population, any of the signs of the opposite of what he has declared in that sentence, where when we look at charts, when we look at data, when we look at signals max, when we look at how electricity prices are moving parabolic, when we look at bond markets collapsing, when you look at the extreme moves, you start to think like something's wrong there, right? Like there's something not right to what we think. If we think it's going well and the signs that say that it's not, then one of us is wrong. Either the data is wrong or our perception's wrong. Well, here, the exodus of Salvadorans to America and elsewhere was a sign that, in fact, what Steve Hanke said was a winning formula was actually a losing formula.
Right. Well, with that U.S. dollar came the exportation of gangs into El Salvador, and you had the rise of gang violence. Steve Hanke, I believe, would think that that's a positive thing. Apparently, he thinks that all kinds of homicides happening on a daily basis is great, according to Steve Hanke, and that the fact that tide has turned on that is a failure. Again, total misunderstanding of how the English language works. Typically, if you have an eradication of violence that was, exported to your country from dollar-denominated colonial interests coming from the north, you would be happy and that would be a success. But according to Steve Hanke, that's a failure. So again, you'd have to question how this guy got into whatever university he got into, because apparently he can't string together two sentences.
And his lies about who is winning and who is losing, it would be the same in Spanish or Finnish or German or Japanese or Chinese. The fact is that meaning is disintegrating in a moment of deglobalization and de-dollarization. This happens. It happened back in the late 1800s through to World War II. That was a similar process of deglobalization that happened, where order and chaos flip over and words stopped having meaning. That's what George Orwell was writing about. The world he saw around him, the totalitarianism, the tyranny, was a mindset of this sort of thing, where we know about how language in terms of gender and identity and stuff like that has flipped completely on the head of like what we saw for several thousand years of human history, and we just decided on a whim to change it. The same thing with who is winning and who is losing. Like, a man is a woman now and a woman is a man now, and a winner is a loser and a loser is a winner. Like, they just decide out of the blue that the entire meaning, whatever language it's in, is the opposite of what it used to be. And that is what George Orwell said was totalitarianism. That's a description of what totalitarianism is. And this often happens in periods of deglobalization and de-dollarization, or whatever currency was the reserve currency disintegrating, sterling before the dollar and other fiat and currencies before that.
Right. Well, whenever you can get away with the decadence of reinventing the meaning of words on the fly to suit a political agenda, it's because of those who control the money printing are totally autocratically controlling the economy. So what we have in the United States and other countries around the world where central banks are in power is authoritarianism. So it's authoritarianism by the money printer. Here in El Salvador, it's the complete opposite. There's the rise of a meritocracy where there is no money printer. There's a Bitcoin is legal tender, and people are left to their own devices to be entrepreneurially excellent and to come up with ways to improve their lives and their family lives. And the results are on the ground. You can see it. It's palpable. And everybody is having really a spring, a Salvadoran spring that's becoming a model for the region and a model for the world, all because of what Steve Hanke would call a failure. So again, because he's associated with the money printers, because he's in league with the money printers, he's forced, essentially he's coercing his readers into believing the unbelievable. And because it's propaganda. Let's be honest, Steve Hanke is a propagandist.
He might believe that winning is failing and failing is winning. He might believe that a person with a penis is a woman. Like that might be their mindset. It is brainwashing that has happened. So he is, however, I'm saying on the Max and Stacy report that what I observe as a Bitcoiner and somebody who hasn't gone insane, who is not smoking some fiat dope, the fact is I could see the data shows that they are actually losing. So yes, they won that battle of seizing and stealing the assets of Russia, for example, but they're losing the war because not only are they losing the war because they, in terms of their electricity and energy prices, but you lost your exorbitant privilege. There have been 3 layer 1 monies in history. You've had gold, you had US Treasury, and you have Bitcoin. They blew the US Treasury for no reason. They just did it themselves. That's losing. You're lost. Like you lost blowing up your own exorbitant privilege. You took it away. You blew it up. That's losing in my book. They might say it's winning, but I think, that they're wrong.
Right, the Truman Show of having world reserve currency dollar create the hologram of American success has been punctured on February of 2022. And now we're in a post-fiat money world. Well, let's talk more about this after the break. This is fascinating stuff. Don't go away.
Are you interested in Bitcoin but don't know where to start? Fold is the easiest and most fun way to earn Bitcoin on everything you do. The Daily Wheel is free for everyone. You just open the app and spin for free Bitcoin. Seriously, there's no catch. And get the free Fold card to earn Bitcoin back on every purchase. Download the Fold app and get started today.
Welcome back to Max Stacy Report. I'm Max Keiser. We're coming to you live, not live, but here from El Salvador, land of the free, home of the Bitcoin. Stacy.
Right. Tomorrow is the anniversary of the Bitcoin law, the passed, and as we said, a national review is saying that it is a failure. We say that, in fact, the same sort of person who writes that says, upon looking at the West and the fiat world and the dollar world, that they're winning. So that perhaps the meaning of winning and the meaning of losing, they've swapped the meaning. So they've reversed the meaning from what everybody is taught in economics, in history, in culture, like all the stuff you've been taught forever, the totalitarianism, the tyranny of the swapping out the meaning of words has affected them.
He's gaslighting us. Steve Hanke is gaslighting the world by writing words that make no sense in a National Review or some magazine that supposedly has some reputation, and people read it and they get confused. And that's what the point is, to confuse people. And once you confuse people, you can feed them a lot more lies. There's clearly a lie. I mean, he's been doing this for years. He's one of 3 or 4 journalists that you can hire to write gaslighting nonsense in these periodicals. And but it's clearly the history, he's on the wrong side of history, because everything in El Salvador is picking up. And it's all proving him to be horribly wrong. And then someday he'll retire and nobody will think about him anymore. He'll take his paycheck, he'll be on the beach for the rest of his days, and nobody will remember this propagandist named Steve Hanke.
So again, like the point is they swap the meaning of words. Loser means winner, winner means loser. So they can decide that declare you a loser because you're a winner, because they've swapped the meaning of words. And they can do this through things like censorship. They've done this through like hiding or silencing online anybody who talks about certain topics, like even inflation or hyperinflation, or the fact that maybe seizing, i.e. stealing the reserves of Russia, maybe you lost. Like you can't actually say those sort of things in our public square, which is Twitter, Facebook, and things like that. Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg recently admitted to the fact that he, at the behest of the FBI, silenced certain stories so that a narrative could be pushed forward. And the narrative that I'm saying includes words, and words no longer have meaning, because if the narrative that they're pushing needs the meaning of those words to change, they'll do that. And they're succeeding for some people, some parts of the population, because of that. So think of the World Economic Forum. You'll own nothing and you'll be happy. Remember, that is the phrase that they use. Now, of course, in the Enlightenment societies and civilizations like the United States, like Europe, are based on Enlightenment ideals that all humans have the right to life, liberty, and property. Or pursuit of happiness is often used for the third one, like in the US Constitution. So you'll own nothing, you'll have no property, and you'll be happy. So that's like changing the meaning of Enlightenment ideals of what humans want and need, and what a government is there to provide is that the government is there to provide protection for life, liberty, and property. That's what President Bukele, for example, is doing, I argue, all the time in El Salvador. The human rights violations that were going on for decades was what we saw in areas where gangs were denying the right to life, liberty, property, pursuit of happiness. So here we have, you will own nothing and you'll be happy. Marty Bent refers this to a story out of the United Kingdom where they're winning. The United Kingdom is winning in this, whatever's happening in this deglobalization and de-dollarization, represented as what's going on with the conflict with Russia, right? So here is the headline from the UK. My mom owns a small cafe in Leicester. Her electricity bill has just jumped from £10,000 a year to £55,000 a year. She is working out her options, but more than likely she will be forced to close.
Well, let me explain this in terms of the board game Monopoly, which everybody understands and played for many years. And on February 24th of 2022, something happened in the global Monopoly game. Up until then, it was, the US dollar was the world reserve bank, just like a Monopoly. They had one bank, it's all the money. And people were buying and selling properties on this Monopoly board, and everyone was participating, and we had some winners and losers. But on February 24th of 2024, what happened is that there's a couple of squares on the Monopoly board called utilities. And if you land on those squares, you have to pay your utility bill. So what Russia did was, you know what? If you land on our utility square, we're going to charge you about 50,000 times more than is in the rule book that you are currently playing Monopoly under. And this poor woman in Leicester, who has a coffee shop where she sells Marmite smeared all over, bundies or biddies, bacon biddies and fry sandwiches, chip sandwiches. She's suddenly getting the new Monopoly board game that says if you land on the utility bill, that is your energy bill, you're going to have to pay, 5,000 times higher, because that's the new game, the new Monopoly board. And if you never got the memo, it doesn't matter, because you are a winner by paying all that into money that goes into, by the way, Electricity of France, EDF, which owns all the utilities in the UK, by giving France all of your hard-earned money over there at the crisp shop and the chip shop and the flaky fish and chip shop. You're winning. You're winning by losing. You're winning by going broke. You're winning because you're at the food bank. You're winning because you're living on Marmite. You're winning. Don't you get it?
Exactly. Well, again, they keep on saying you're winning, despite the evidence. So of course, if they think they're winning, even though the evidence and the data and the numbers and the charts and the just looking with your own two eyes, you could see they're losing. Those same people, it makes sense that they're going to look at El Salvador and say that they're losing. Even though, as we've pointed out, the tourism is increasing, the foreign direct investment is increasing, the diaspora is returning. Those same people who fled under the period where Steve Hanke says was great, those people are returning. The rebrand happened for less than $100 million. We got a several multi-billion-dollar rebrand that happened. That is huge success. Of course, Madison Avenue would declare huge victory. They would be winning awards. Any marketing or advertising agency on Madison Avenue did the rebrand that President Bukele did for El Salvador. They would be winning every single award that is available in that industry to Madison Avenue. Well, he did it. He won, right? So of course, but in their world where all the meanings of words have altered, it makes sense if you understand.
Look, if anybody in the UK is suffering under high energy bills and Steve Hanke claims that you're winning, what you should do is get naked, rub Marmite all over your body, and Steve Hanke will come and lick it off. Now that's winning. That's winning.
I wouldn't want to encourage too many Brits to do that. They might follow up on that. But I'm going to look at a story from Germany where, again, they're part of this winning team, they claim, that looks like it's losing. Their electricity prices are climbing, their energy prices are parabolic. They turned off their nuclear for some reason. They decided, nobody else forced them to do it. They turned off their natural gas, nobody forced them to do it. But here's one of the consequences, and that is that, to put things into perspective, supermarket prices in Germany are rising at a record pace. Food CPI, consumer price inflation, jumped 16.6% year on year in August, the highest food price inflation since the start of the statistics, and those go back to 1992. You can see that little parabolic move there. It doesn't look great, but hey, if you say you're winning, you're winning.
Holy Wiener Schnitzel. Yeah, that's the thing, is that the Monopoly Board has been reconfigured. The rules have changed. The US dollar dominating the global economy is no longer the case. Countries are doing bilateral trade in currencies outside of the US dollar. And you've got supply lines breaking, and you've got politicians in Europe and the UK and America who are ignoring the fact that the only possible way to stop this inflation from ravaging these economies and causing death and famine is to actually allow energy to flow from the east to the west. That's actually what winning would look like. Ultimately, there will be no choice. Ultimately, that will be the outcome. It's just a matter of how much pain you're willing to go through before that eventuality takes place, or as Steve Hanke likes to call it, winning.
Well, you bring up death and destruction. We have some headlines about that, and that is, so when we're talking about deglobalization and de-dollarization, again, we keep on stressing this. This has happened in history. Deglobalization happens every time an empire or a great power or several powers collapse, and there's a bit of chaos. And in that chaos is what we're seeing. What we're saying is, throughout history, you've had periods of what Orwell would have called totalitarianism. You could call it whatever you want, but the fact is, like, words flip in meaning because, of course, the most powerful becomes the weakest becomes the most powerful. In El Salvador, which used to be in the world in which the United States and the US dollar reigned supreme, they used to be the most violent nation in the world. This August, they had their least violent, the lowest number of homicides in their modern history. Now we're going to turn to just what I'm saying, like when Steve Hanke looks at America and says they're winning and that El Salvador is losing, we'll look at a headline which is quite tragic from America. And this is US life expectancy fell by nearly a year in 2021 to 76.1, the lowest since 1996, the first 2-year drop since early 1960s, and the largest since 1921-23 period. Of course, that 21-23 period was during the previous period of deglobalization. So again, you just look at the facts from a stable foundation like Bitcoin, where there is no disintegration and entropy happening like there is in the dollar and US empire, the deglobalization, de-dollarization. And from a stable position of looking, observing without partisanship to it, like you could see who is lying, where the truth is, in fact.
Yeah, life expectancy dropping in America. Steve Hanke, of course, refers to this as winning. You've got tens of thousands of people dying from OxyContin overdoses put together by the major pharmaceutical companies. Steve Hanke calls that winning. You've got major people dying from fentanyl in the street, homeless, living in their own defecation, a complete disintegration of society. According to Steve Hanke, that's winning. So yeah, they're winning. They're doing great in America. It's deaths of despair, life expectancy is collapsing, infant mortality is on the up, and the GDP is contracting, and you've got a neo-feudal, entrenched monarchy/aristocracy and oligarchy in America that's ripping people off left and right. But according to Steve Hanke, that's winning.
But El Salvador is, in fact, winning.
El Salvador is doing fantastically well. Come on down and visit. Well, that's it for this edition of Max and Stacy Report with me, Max and Stacy, coming to you from El Salvador, land of the free, home of the Bitcoin. Until next time, bye, y'all.